Hi everyone. Let's rate a few of the transactions that have happened in Major League Baseball recently, starting with Devin Williams. So I'm going to rate this one as about a C+, actually, a little bit more towards the bad than the good. And the reason why I say that is I have a fear that what you saw from Devin Williams last year was because he was in New York. He's just a guy that couldn't handle the New York press, couldn't handle the pressure, which is going to be a little bit better on the Mets side than it is on the Yankees side. But I still don't think that this is going to turn out good. I think this would have been a great signing if it was any one of the other 28 teams in baseball, anybody outside of New York. But with being in New York, you saw last year that it's not that the stadium did him in, and we all know that that's a bandbox. He threw the same amount of home runs, essentially, that he did during his good years. Like in 2021, he threw 5 home runs over 54 innings, threw 5 home runs over 62 innings last year. However, in 2021, in that year I'm talking about, he had a 2.5 ERA. So to me, there's something else. And a lot of people like to talk about, like, well, his underlying metrics are still pretty good, which they are. If you're going to sit here and compare 2025 to, I'm going to go back to 2023 because he didn't pitch a ton last year. You'll see he pitched some, but they kind of not enough for it to like count. So if you start comparing 2023 and 2025, yeah, on face value, it's like, yep, they're all up there. And then you go to 2025 and they're down a little bit, but they're still mostly up there, like good. Some of the things that I noticed though is if you look at his average exit velocity, he's at almost 90 in 2025. So 89.5. You go back to his heyday years, 85.9, 84.3, and 85.7. So he's living in that 85 range where last year is at 90. And we just saw that it wasn't home runs. It wasn't the long ball that did him in. So he was kind of consistently getting hit harder, and which led to a much, much higher ERA than he's used to doing. So I'm just guessing here, because it's anybody's guess is as good as anybody else's, that it's a New York thing. And I don't think that that's going to leave him this year. I think he might have those same problems. Now, on the whole Mets side of things, what does this do with Edwin Diaz, which is the question everyone's asking. And most people want to still believe like, oh, okay, well, they still could get Edwin Diaz and you can still have this 1-2 punch. I don't think you want to get Edwin Diaz if you already have Devin Williams. And let me explain why that is. I think the biggest problem with the Dodgers bullpen last year, minus injuries, was no one knew the role. They didn't know whether it was going to be Tanner Scott closing this game, or whether it was going to be Kirby Yates before he got injured, or when they were all back for a period of time, was it going to be Trianon? You have to know going into the game who's the closer, who's generally going to pitch in the 8th, who's generally going to pitch in the 7th. So if I'm a reliever and I can sit there and I can say, all right, I know if I'm pitching today, it's going to be the 6th or the 7th inning, and it's probably going to be in this type of a situation because that's the situation I always pitch in. And now what you're doing, or what the Dodgers did, was they're trying to tell people like, okay, you might pitch in the 7th inning some nights, and you might pitch in the 9th inning some nights. And that's why I think they pitch so below what they're capable of. Bring that back to the Mets. If you get Edwin Diaz and you have this thought process that you're like, well, I can close with both guys, then you better have some sort of schedule. You better let them know, like, tonight's your night, tonight's not your night, whatever. Or you'd be much better off being like, one of them's going to be the 8th inning guy and one of them's going to be the 9th inning guy. And they know that going forward, and that's their role for the entire year. However, if you do that, now you're paying $17 million a year for, I'm just assuming Devin Williams would be the setup guy. I don't know, maybe they'd flip it, but I kind of doubt it. You're paying $17 million a year for a setup guy. And who even knows what it's going to take to get Diaz 20-something for your closer? So I do think this puts them out of the Diaz market, and maybe that's enough right there to say this is not totally a great thing. I'm not trashing this. I don't think this is terrible. I really like Devin Williams. If you would ask me a week ago, I'd have said he's going to have this huge, gigantic bounce back year, but I did not think he was going to go back to a New York team. I thought he was just going to go out and do whatever. And then I think you would see the repeat of these like 21 22, 23, all these years. So we'll see. I've been wrong a bunch of times before, but that's just my thought process on that one, that I just don't think that that one's going to end up as good for the Mets as they think it's going to be. So we'll move on to Ryan Helsley. Now this one might shock you because I'm just sitting, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing Devin Williams. I wasn't. I like the guy a lot. I just think the New York thing is going to get him, like I said. So a lot of people think, well, then you must hate this one. I actually like this move. I like this move a lot by the Orioles. First of all, for timing reasons. So it's a 2-year contract with the opt-out after 1 year. Batista is going to be back somewhat in like August is the guess. Maybe it's later. Maybe he doesn't pitch all year. But he should definitely be back by 2027, assuming he doesn't re-injure himself. Helsley has any kind of decent year, he's gone. I mean, this is essentially a 1-year contract. So from the timing perspective, we needed a closer for a year. There's the 4 big ones on the market, right? We know there was, but Helsley, Williams, Edwin Diaz, and Robert Suarez. Orioles got the cheapest one out of all of them, in my opinion. And I think all 4 of those guys were or are going to have a good year. I say were because I had Devin Williams in that good year thing until he went back to New York, which I've already mentioned. But I think Helsley's going to work out here well. I think he's going to have a big bounce back year. And I think it's going to be really good for the Orioles. If you want to look at his metrics, clearly they don't look good in 2025. And this is another guy I personally think New York just got to him. And the reason why I say that, and most people already know this, is like his first half of 2025, yeah, it's a tick down from his normal stuff. But he still pitched at a 3 ERA. Gave up 4 home runs over 36 innings. Walked 14 guys over 36 innings, but he's always kind of been a guy that, like, he's kind of up there in walks. So it really wasn't that bad. His whip was a little bit higher than normal, too, which is somewhat problematic. Like, it's not a good sign. But he's still 3 ERA. He still pitched well. Then he goes to the Mets, and it's just terrible. 4 home runs in just 20 innings. 11 walks in just 20 innings. So I give him even more of a pass of like, it's just this New York thing. And that's what I would do. I would give Devin Williams a pass too. It's just the New York thing, except he goes back there. Helsley goes to one of the other teams, gets away from New York. I think he's going to be just fine. And the other thing I kind of notice is looking at this baseball savant stuff is as bad of a year as he had last year. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Let me know in the comments if you think this is a good thing or a bad thing. But his average exit velocity is almost the same. 89.4 to 91 from year to year. And then if you go back to 2023, it's 88.6. Yeah, I probably didn't pitch enough that year. But if you go back to 2022, 88.8. He's always been in that same range. He basically gave up the same amount of hard hit balls that he did in prior years. It's just the difference was he gave up a lot of home runs. So here's a guy where I would sit here and say, like, I mean, his FIP would actually be damaged by giving up the home runs, but I'd be more inclined to believe like his FIP than other stuff because he's just giving up home runs that at a much higher rate than he normally does, and that did him in. So all in all, I think this is a pretty good move by them. I mean, if I had to give it like a letter grade, I'd give it like a B+, but I think it's pretty good. I think they needed a closer. If they had any idea of trying to compete this year and actually trying to go for it, which they just play in the wrong division. I still think they're going to finish 4th. But, you know, if certain guys bounce back and, you know, like Gunnar and Westy and all those guys bounce back, then fine. Then, you know, it makes sense that you would think that you're going to do well. So then, therefore, you're going to have to get the 9th inning guy because you just lost yours for the first 100 or so games of the year. So you get one. And you make it a deal where he loves it, he being Helsley, because he can opt out after 1 year. So he's got the incentive to pitch well because he can make a lot of money if he pitches well and gets back on the open market. And it's good for you because you're probably not going to need a closer in 2027. You'll have Batista back. So I just kind of like everything about it. I think it works out really well. So last one I'm going to talk about tonight is the Taylor Ward Grayson Rodriguez trade, which I think is the hardest one to grade and you know, put a finger on and figure it out, because this is clearly one of those trades that no one's going to know how good or bad it is until at least after this year, if not a couple years. Taylor Ward, we all know what we're getting with Taylor Ward. I mean, he's going to hit his home runs, but he's going to strike out. He's not a high average guy, but he'll knock guys in. He's a run producer. He can fit very nicely in the Orioles lineup, 5th or 6th, or hell, they might even bat him 4th. I don't know. But he'll fit somewhere in the middle of the lineup well, and he's not amazing defensively, but he's not terrible. That's just my opinion. I don't go off the metrics. I go more off of like what I see with my own eyes in the games that I've watched him, and he's okay. He's good enough, right? So I think you know what you're getting. You're getting 1 year of it. You're kind of like, hey, let's boost the offense. And honestly, especially if like I said, if Gunnar comes back, has a bounce back year, and Westberg doesn't get hurt, Cowser comes back well and doesn't get hurt, Mountcastle turns it back around, you could have a really crazy good lineup like everybody thought they would have last year. So if you had that 2024 lineup type and then you stick in Taylor Ward to that, like they're going to be really, really good. Obviously, they need to go out and get some starters, probably 2 of them. But, well, that is part of this trade, right? You thought you had a starter, so now you really have to get 2 of them. But lineup-wise, they look pretty good. Now, the Grayson Rodriguez front, I'm not even going to bring up anything for him because I think it's irrelevant. Like, I think his past, the injuries aren't irrelevant, but like whatever he's done in the past, we don't know whether he's that guy or not. We just don't. And we'll have to see. Like, how many innings is he going to pitch? How well is he going to pitch? If he comes back and he's 90% of peak Grayson Rodriguez that you saw with the Orioles, this is an ugly trade for the Orioles. You do not want to give up on a guy like that. But their thought process clearly was like, I don't want to say cooked, but he's just going to battle this for the rest of his career. He might give you 60, 70 good solid innings in a row. So we'll call that like 12 starts. And then the lats hurt, or the elbows hurt, or this hurts, or that's gone, and that's it. I mean, is that worth having that around versus a guy that you know you can plug in your lineup as a middle of the order guy? Like, I think that's what they thought. So we're all going to find out. You know, like I said, I give it 2 years. Then you'll really know. Because like Grayson might come back and pitch really well in 26 and then messes something up in spring training in 2027 and is never even close to being the same. And then you're like, well, you got 1 year for 1 year. So it just depends. I guess if I have to grade it, I would definitely grade it in the Angels' favor. Like you're taking a risk, but you're taking a good risk. You're getting rid of a guy that you knew you were going to get rid of anyway. He's got 1 year left. And you're getting a guy who's got 4 years of control that I don't know if he's ever going to become ace material, like even if he comes back to being him. But he's definitely a number 2. So you're taking a chance to get a guy for 4 years that could be a number 2. Like, yeah, I'm going to say you're going to win that trade. Just on the fact that, like, you're taking the chance. But long way of saying, like, no one knows. So but again, we have to grade it some way. So I will say ugly for the Orioles and, like, obviously pretty good for the Angels on that one. But time will tell. They could easily flip. That's going to do it for this video. Check out my previous videos. I got one on Tarek Skubal, one on Jose Barrios, and I'll be doing some more shortly. So again, thanks for watching, everybody, and have a good one.